The wine glass almost slipped through my fingers when my son Marcus told everyone at the fancy restaurant table that I was looking for work. His new wife, Sophia, giggled and said I'd probably never find another job. Everyone at the table started laughing. They thought it was so funny that a 52-year-old woman like me couldn't find work anymore. But I laughed too because I knew something they didn't know. Something big. My name is Linda Carter, and I've worked at the same library for 28 years. I loved helping people find books and teaching kids how to read. But last month, the city closed my library to save money. They said goodbye to me and 15 other workers who had been there for years. Where are you watching from today? Write your city in the comments and click the like button for Granny's voice. Marcus met Sophia 8 months ago at a charity event where rich people give money to look good. Sophia was beautiful, had blonde hair, and came from a family with lots and lots of money. Her father, William Harrison, owned Harrison Industries. They buy small businesses that are having trouble and then change them to make more money. Sometimes this means firing the people who work there. At dinner, Sophia's mother, Catherine, asked me what kind of work I did. When I told her I worked at a library, she made a face like she smelled something bad. "Oh, how quaint," she said. That means she thought my job wasn't important. William Harrison said the library closing was probably for the best since nobody reads real books anymore. Everyone nodded like he was so smart. But what none of them knew was that my Aunt Rose had passed away 2 months ago in Australia. I hadn't seen Aunt Rose since I was a little girl. She moved away before I was born and we only got Christmas cards from her. The family always thought she lived in a tiny apartment and painted pictures for tourists. We thought she was very poor. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. A man named Mr. Peterson called from a law office in Sydney. "Mrs. Carter, I'm calling about your late Aunt Rose Bennett's estate. There's been a development we need to discuss right away." I thought maybe she left me her old paintings or some dishes. I never expected what he said next. "Your aunt passed away 6 weeks ago. You are the only person named in her will. Mrs. Carter, your aunt was very successful with her investments and her art. Her estate is worth approximately $52 million. Had to sit down. My hands were shaking. $52 million. That's more money than I could ever imagine. Aunt Rose was secretly rich all these years. Mr. Peterson explained that Aunt Rose had sold her paintings to famous people and museums. She also bought and sold buildings in Sydney. She was smart with money and it grew and grew over 45 years. And now it was all mine. By lunchtime I could see the money in my bank account. All those zeros made my head spin. That same day, at exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I had to go to Marcus and Sophia's engagement party at the Harrison Mansion. It was a huge house with marble floors and crystal lights hanging from the ceiling. Everything was white and gold and looked like a palace. I felt very small in my simple dress from the department store. Catherine Harrison looked at me like I was a stain on her expensive carpet. William barely said hello. They were busy telling everyone about their latest business success. Sophia showed off her huge engagement ring and talked about the wedding they were planning. It would cost more than most people make in 5 years. During dinner, William started talking about his business. He was very proud of himself. The secret to success is finding businesses that are weak. You buy them for very little money, fire the expensive workers, and sell everything valuable. I've done this 37 times in the last 3 years. He smiled like he was a hero. Marcus was listening to William like he was the smartest man in the world. My son, who I raised to be kind and fair, was nodding along as this man talked about destroying people's jobs. Sophia squeezed Marcus's hand and said, "Daddy is so good at business. Marcus is learning so much from him." That's when Catherine asked about my job situation again. "Have you found any work yet, Linda? I imagine at your age, it must be terribly difficult." The way she said "your age" made it sound like I was 100 years old. Before I could answer, Marcus jumped in. "Mom's between jobs right now. The library closed last month." Sophia laughed and said, "Probably forever, right? I mean, who needs librarians anymore?" Everyone at the table laughed. Even Marcus chuckled a little bit. They thought my whole career, my life's work, was a joke. They thought I was worthless because I didn't make lots of money. I smiled and laughed too, but inside I was making a plan. William kept talking about his business deals. He mentioned something interesting. We just bought 3 more companies this month. Technology businesses that couldn't keep up with the modern world. One of them is called TechBridge Solutions. Small software company, outdated products, expensive employees. Perfect target for what we do best. I asked him, trying to sound casual, "Do you ever feel bad about the people who lose their jobs?" William looked at me like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world. Business isn't about feelings, Linda. It's about profit. Those people should have worked harder or been smarter. That's not my problem. After dinner, Marcus drove me home to my small apartment. It has 2 bedrooms and old furniture I've had for 20 years. Sophia wrinkled her nose when she came inside. "It's so cozy," she said. That's code for too small and poor. They talked about their honeymoon plans to Italy and how expensive everything was going to be. After they left, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about everything. I thought about William Harrison's smug face when he talked about destroying businesses. I thought about Catherine treating me like I was invisible. I thought about Sophia mocking my job and my life. And I thought about Marcus, my sweet boy, laughing along with him. Then I called Mr. Peterson back in Australia. "Mr. Peterson, I need help with something. I want to buy a company. A specific company. Can you connect me with someone who knows how to do this?" He was quiet for a second, then said, "Mrs. Carter, what kind of company are we talking about?" I told him, "Harrison Industries. I want to buy the whole thing." Mr. Peterson connected me with a woman named Jennifer Wu. She's an expert at buying and selling companies. She called me within an hour. "Mrs. Carter, buying Harrison Industries would be complicated. It's worth about $45 million. They're privately owned, which actually makes it easier in some ways. But we'd need to move fast." I asked her how long it would take. Jennifer said, "If we're aggressive and smart about it, maybe 10 days. 2 weeks at most. But Mrs. Carter, can I ask why you want this particular company?" I told her everything. About the dinner, the insults, the way they laughed at me. About William's cruel business practices. About my son forgetting where he came from. Jennifer was quiet, then she said, "Mrs. Carter, I think I can help you. Not just because you're paying me, but because I like the idea of teaching people like William Harrison a lesson. People like him think they're untouchable. Let's prove them wrong." That night I barely slept. I kept imagining William Harrison's face when he found out. The next morning, Jennifer called with a plan. Harrison Industries is strong on the surface, but they have problems underneath. They owe money to several banks. They're being sued by 3 different companies for unfair business practices. And they just borrowed $8 million to buy those new companies William mentioned at dinner. "Here's what we're going to do," Jennifer continued. "We're going to buy Harrison's debts from the banks. Once we own what they owe, we can demand payment immediately. They won't be able to pay, which means they'll have to either declare bankruptcy or sell the company to avoid it. And we'll be right there with an offer." It was brilliant. William Harrison had spent years buying struggling companies and destroying them. Now someone was going to do the same thing to him. The irony was beautiful. "How much will all of this cost?" Yes. Jennifer calculated quickly. Buying the debts, legal fees, and the final purchase. Probably $48 million total. "Do you have access to those funds?" I thought about my quiet life, my small apartment, my simple pleasures. Did I really want to spend almost all of Aunt Rose's money on revenge? Then I remembered William saying that the people he fired should have worked harder. I remembered Catherine's disgusted face when she looked at my job history. I remembered Sophia's cruel laugh. "Yes," I told Jennifer. "Let's do it." Over the next week, Jennifer worked magic. She bought Harrison Industries' debts from 3 different banks. None of them knew who was buying. The banks were happy to sell because they were worried Harrison might not pay them back anyway. By Thursday, Jennifer owned 67% of everything Harrison Industries owed. I lived my normal life during this time. I went to the grocery store. I watched my favorite TV shows. I called Marcus a few times, but he was always busy with wedding planning. Sophia's mother had him running around looking at fancy venues and tasting expensive cakes. He sounded tired but happy. On Friday morning, Jennifer called with excitement in her voice. "Linda, we did it. We now own enough of Harrison's debt that we can force a sale. I'm calling William Harrison this afternoon to inform him. He'll have 72 hours to either pay us $31 million in cash or negotiate a sale of the company. Will he be able to pay?" Yes. Jennifer laughed. "Not a chance. He's stretched too thin with these new acquisitions. He'll have to talk to us. This is where it gets fun." I felt butterflies in my stomach. It was really happening. In 3 days, William Harrison's world was going to fall apart. That afternoon, Jennifer made the call. She recorded it for me so I could listen later. "Mr. Harrison, my name is Jennifer Wu. I represent a client who has acquired significant portions of your company's outstanding debts. We're calling in those debts immediately. You have 72 hours to pay $31 million, or we'll be forced to pursue other options." William's voice on the recording was shocked and angry. "Who is your client? This is highly unusual. You can't just call in debts like this." Jennifer stayed calm and professional. "Actually, Mr. Harrison, we can. It's all legal. The debt agreements you signed give us this right. So, will you be able to make the payment?" There was a long silence. Then William said, "I need time. I need to talk to my lawyers." Jennifer replied, "You have 72 hours. Not a minute more. We'll be in touch." When she hung up, I imagined William sitting in his fancy office, realizing that he was in serious trouble. The hunter was becoming the hunted. Saturday was Marcus and Sophia's engagement party, the big official one with 200 guests. It was at a country club with waiters in tuxedos and champagne that cost more per bottle than my weekly groceries. I wore my best dress and tried to blend into the background. Catherine Harrison didn't even say hello to me. William looked stressed. His face was red and he kept stepping outside to make phone calls. At one point, I heard him yelling at someone about financial terrorists and impossible demands. He had no idea that the financial terrorist was standing 20 feet away in a department store dress, holding a glass of cheap wine. Sophia gave a speech about how lucky she was to marry into such a wonderful family. She meant my family, but she spent most of the speech talking about her own family and their success. Marcus looked at her like she was the most amazing person in the world. I felt a little piece of my heart break. After the party, Marcus asked if I was okay. "You seem distracted, Mom. Is everything all right?" I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to warn him about what was coming. But I just hugged him and said, "Everything's fine, sweetheart. I'm just so happy for you." He hugged me back and I remembered him as a little boy, before money and status mattered to him. Sunday morning, William Harrison called Jennifer Wu. "I can't pay the $31 million. Not in 72 hours. Not in 72 days. But I can offer you a payment plan. Monthly installments over 5 years with interest." Jennifer, following my instructions, said, "That's not acceptable, Mr. Harrison. We want immediate payment or we want the company." "The company is worth $45 million. William shouted. Jennifer calmly replied, "Actually, given your current legal troubles and debt situation, it's worth considerably less. We're prepared to offer you $18 million for complete ownership of Harrison Industries. Cash payment, closing within 1 week." The silence on the phone was so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, William said, "That's robbery. That's less than half what the company is worth." Jennifer's voice was ice cold. "That's business, Mr. Harrison. Isn't that what you always say? Take the offer or we'll force you into bankruptcy and buy it for even less. You have 24 hours to decide." I spent Sunday afternoon walking in the park near my apartment. Kids were playing on the swings. Dogs were chasing balls. Everything looked normal, but my life had become completely strange. In less than 2 weeks, I'd gone from unemployed librarian to corporate raider. It felt like I was living someone else's life. Monday morning came with a phone call from Jennifer. Linda, he accepted. William Harrison signed the papers an hour ago. Harrison Industries is now yours. The sale will be final on Friday after all the legal paperwork is processed. Congratulations. I sat down hard on my kitchen chair. It was real. I owned William Harrison's company. There's one more thing, Jennifer said. Harrison wants to meet with you. He's been asking about my client's identity. I haven't told him yet, but he's going to find out when the papers are signed on Friday. Do you want to meet with him before then? Thought about it. Yes, I said. Let's meet on Thursday. I want to see his face. The next few days felt like they lasted forever. I couldn't tell Marcus. I couldn't tell anyone. I just went about my normal routine, but everything felt different. I was walking around with this huge secret. At night, I'd lie in bed thinking about what I was going to say to William Harrison when we met. Thursday came. The meeting was at Jennifer Wu's office downtown in a tall building with marble lobby and security guards. I dressed in my nicest outfit, the one I wore to Marcus's law school graduation. I wanted to look respectable but not fancy. I wanted William to see exactly who had destroyed his empire. William Harrison arrived exactly on time. He was wearing an expensive suit and looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes had dark circles and his hands were shaking slightly. Jennifer led him into the conference room where I was waiting. The look on his face when he saw me was worth every penny of Aunt Rose's money. You, he said, his voice full of disbelief. This is some kind of joke. Jennifer pulled out the signed contracts and spread them on the table. No joke, Mr. Harrison. Mrs. Linda Carter is now the owner of Harrison Industries. The sale is final tomorrow at noon. These papers explain the terms. William's face went through about 10 different emotions. Shock, anger, confusion, and finally something that looked like fear. How? Where did you get this kind of money? You're a librarian. I smiled at him, the same polite smile I'd given him at dinner 2 weeks ago. I was a librarian. And apparently, I'm better at business than you are. This is impossible, William said, looking at Jennifer. There must be something illegal here. You can't just take someone's company. Jennifer calmly explained. Actually, we can. Everything we did was completely legal. You borrowed money you couldn't pay back. You made business decisions that left you vulnerable. Mrs. Carter simply took advantage of your situation. Sound familiar? That's when I saw it click in William's brain. He understood what had happened. He'd spent years doing exactly this to other people, and now someone had done it to him. Why? He whispered. Why would you do this to me? I leaned forward and looked him right in the eyes. Do you remember 2 weeks ago at dinner? You said business isn't about feelings. You laughed when your daughter mocked my career. You bragged about firing people to increase your profits. You treated me like I was worthless because I don't have money or power. Well, Mr. Harrison, I have both now. And I'm using them exactly the way you taught me. William's face went pale. He looked old suddenly and small. What are you going to do with my company? He asked quietly. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared with Jennifer's help. I'm going to fix it. Every business you destroyed, every person you fired without cause, every family you hurt. I'm going to make it right. Harrison Industries is going to become Harrison Recovery Fund. We're going to contact every company you acquired and stripped for parts. We're going to compensate the workers you fired. We're going to return pension money you redirected. And you're going to help us do it, because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly how you built your fortune on other people's suffering. William sat there staring at the papers like they might change if he looked long enough. My daughter's wedding, he finally said. How am I supposed to pay for Sophia's wedding? I felt a little bit of sympathy for him, but only a little bit. I suppose you'll have to do what normal people do. Have a wedding you can actually afford. After William left, Looking 20 years older than when he arrived, Jennifer and I sat in her office. "That was intense," she said. "How do you feel?" "Thought about it. I feel like I just stood up to the biggest bully in school. Scared but good. Really good." Jennifer smiled. "What's your next step?" "I need to tell Marcus," I said. "Tonight. Before he hears it from William or Sophia. This is going to change everything." Jennifer nodded. "It will. But sometimes things need to change. Sometimes people need to remember what really matters." I drove home slowly, practicing what I was going to say to my son. I called Marcus at 6 o'clock and asked him to come over. Just him, not Sophia. He sounded worried. "Mom, is everything okay? You sound strange." I told him I needed to talk to him about something important. He said he'd be there in 30 minutes. Those 30 minutes felt like 30 hours. When Marcus arrived, he looked concerned. "Mom, what's going on? You're scaring me." I made him sit down on the couch and I told him everything. About Aunt Rose and the inheritance. About the dinner party and how hurt I felt. About buying William's company and why I did it. He sat there with his mouth open, not saying a word. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Marcus said, "Mom, are you serious? You bought William's entire company. With $52 million you inherited." He nodded. "I had to, Marcus. Not just for me but for all the people he hurt. And because I needed you to see that money doesn't make someone valuable. Kindness does. Character does." Marcus put his head in his hands. "Sophia's going to lose her mind. Her dad is going to be devastated. The wedding, the lifestyle, everything they planned." I reached over and touched his arm. "Sweetheart, if Sophia only loves you because of her father's money and connections, then she doesn't really love you. You're worth so much more than that." "But I love her," Marcus said, and I could see tears in his eyes. "I know you do," I said softly. "And real love survives hard times. If she loves you the same way, you'll get through this together. But Marcus, you need to decide what kind of man you want to be. The kind who laughs when people mock his mother. Or the kind who stands up for what's right." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I'm so sorry, Mom. For laughing at dinner. For not defending you. For getting caught up in all the money and status. Dad would be so disappointed in me." I hugged him tight. "Your father would be proud of who you can become. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next." After Marcus left, I sat alone in my apartment and wondered if I'd done the right thing. Was this revenge, or was it justice? Maybe it was both. Maybe sometimes they're the same thing. My phone rang. It was Jennifer Wu. "Linda, I thought you should know. William Harrison just held a press conference. He's telling everyone that Harrison Industries is being sold due to financial restructuring." "Did he mention me?" "Yes." Jennifer laughed. "Not by name. He's too embarrassed. But he did say that the new owner plans to compensate former employees and reverse some of the company's previous business decisions. The local news is calling it a major shift in corporate responsibility. You're making headlines, Linda, even if they don't know your name yet." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the people whose lives would change because of what I'd done. The workers who lost their jobs at TechBridge Solutions. The families affected by William's other acquisitions. Tomorrow, Friday, the sale would be final and I could start making things right. Friday morning arrived with sunshine and a phone call from Marcus. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Can I come over?" He sounded upset. When he arrived, he wasn't alone. Sophia was with him, and she looked like she'd been crying. This was going to be interesting. I invited them both in and offered coffee, which they refused. Sophia sat on my old couch and looked at me with red, puffy eyes. "Mrs. Carter, Marcus told me what you did. How you bought my father's company." I waited for her to yell or cry or storm out. Instead, she said, "I need to apologize to you. For everything I said at dinner. For how my parents treated you. For being awful." I was shocked. "Sophia, she held up her hand. "Please let me finish. I've been spoiled my whole life. I thought money and status were the most important things. I laughed at you because my parents laugh at people like you and I thought that was normal. But it's not normal. It's cruel. And I'm ashamed of myself. Marcus was holding Sophia's hand, looking proud of her. She continued, "My father is devastated. Not just about the business, but because he finally understands what he's been doing to people all these years. Last night he couldn't stop crying. He kept saying he was sorry. I've never seen him cry before." "And your mother?" asked. Sophia wiped her eyes. "My mother is angry. She's blaming everyone but herself and my father. She thinks you're evil and vindictive. But I don't think that. Think you're brave. You stood up to people who were mean to you, and you're using your money to help others. That's not evil. That's heroic." I felt tears in my own eyes now. "Sophia, thank you for saying that. I didn't do this to hurt you or Marcus. I did it because someone needed to show your father that his actions have consequences." Sophia nodded. "I understand. And I want you to know that Marcus and I are still getting married. But we're going to have a small wedding. A real wedding, not a show-off party. We're going to pay for it ourselves," Marcus added. "With my salary from the law firm. It'll take time to save up, but that's okay. We want to start our marriage the right way, without depending on anyone else's money." I felt so proud of my son in that moment. He'd learned the lesson I was trying to teach him. The rest of Friday was a whirlwind. At noon, I signed the final papers making me the owner of Harrison Industries. Jennifer Wu organized a meeting with the company's employees for next week. We were going to explain everything and start making changes immediately. The news started spreading fast. That evening my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted interviews. Former Harrison Industries employees wanted to know if the rumors about compensation were true. Some of William's business associates called to express their shock. I ignored most of the calls, but I did answer one from a woman named Helen Rodriguez. "Mrs. Carter, my name is Helen Rodriguez. Your company, I mean William Harrison's company, bought my family's restaurant supply business 3 years ago. They fired my father, who started the company 40 years ago. He died 6 months later of a broken heart. Is it true you're planning to compensate families like mine?" I told Helen yes, it was true. She started crying on the phone. "My father worked his whole life building that business. When Harrison bought it, they promised to keep him on as a consultant. Instead, they fired him the next day. He lost everything. His life's work, his purpose, his reason to get up in the morning. I'm so sorry that happened to your father," I said. "And I'm going to do everything I can to make it right. It won't bring him back, but maybe it can help your family rebuild." Helen was quiet for a moment, then said, "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to us." But I did know. I understood exactly what it meant. Over the weekend, Jennifer and I worked on the compensation plan. We identified 27 businesses that Harrison Industries had acquired and destroyed. We made a list of approximately 800 people who had been fired or had their pensions reduced. The total compensation we planned to pay out was $35 million. "That's almost everything you have left," Jennifer pointed out. He nodded. "I know. But it's the right thing to do. I'll still have enough to live on, and that's more than most people can say." Jennifer smiled at me. "Linda, you're one of the most unusual clients I've ever had. Most people who get rich want to keep it all for themselves." Monday morning came with a surprise. William Harrison was waiting outside my apartment building when I left for the day. He looked terrible. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and he hadn't shaved. "Linda, please, I need to talk to you," he said. Part of me wanted to walk past him, but I stopped. "What do you want, William?" "I want to help," he said. "With the compensation fund. With contacting the families. With making things right. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want to try to fix some of it. Please." I studied his face. He looked sincere, but I'd seen him lie before. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you suddenly care about these people?" William looked down at his shoes. "Because Sophia told me she was ashamed of me. My daughter, who I thought loved me, said she was ashamed to be my daughter. That broke something inside me. I've spent my whole life chasing money and power, and I forgot about the people I hurt along the way. I forgot to be a good person. Thought about it. Having William help with the compensation fund would make things easier. He knew all the details of the businesses he'd destroyed. But could I trust him? If you help me, I said, you follow my rules. No shortcuts, no excuses. We contact every single person affected by your business practices, and you personally apologize to each one. Deal. Deal, William said immediately. And that's how William Harrison, former ruthless businessman, became my assistant in trying to repair the damage he'd caused. It was strange working with him, but I had to admit he was helpful. He remembered details about every business deal, every person he'd fired, every shady practice he'd used. Tuesday afternoon, we held our first meeting with former Harrison Industries employees. About 60 people showed up at the community center we'd rented. They looked skeptical and angry, and I didn't blame them. Jennifer Wu explained the compensation plan while William and I sat at the front table. The moment the employees realized William was there, the room exploded. "You've got nerve showing your face here," one man yelled. "You destroyed my family," a woman shouted. Security guards had to step in to keep things calm. I stood up and raised my hands. "Please everyone, let me explain what's happening here. I understand your anger. William Harrison hurt a lot of people. But he's here to help make things right." The room went quiet, but the anger was still there, simmering like water about to boil. "Mr. Harrison is going to personally apologize to each of you," I continued. "And we're going to compensate you for what was taken from you. Your jobs, your pensions, your futures. We can't give back the time that was lost, but we can give you financial security." One by one, people started sharing their stories. A man named Robert explained how he'd lost his engineering job at age 58 and couldn't find work anywhere else. A woman named Patricia told us about her father's small manufacturing company that Harrison bought and immediately shut down, putting 40 people out of work. The stories went on for hours. Each one was heartbreaking. Each one made William's face grow more pale and ashamed. When the last person finished, William stood up. His hands were shaking. "I owe all of you an apology," he began. "What I did to you was wrong. I told myself it was just business, but it wasn't. It was cruel. It was heartless. I destroyed lives because I wanted more money." Some people in the room were crying. Others looked angry. William continued, "I can't undo what I did. But I can promise you that I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to make it right. I'm going to work with Mrs. Carter to compensate everyone fairly. And I'm going to make sure that no one else suffers the way I made you suffer." The room was silent when William finished. Then, slowly, a woman in the back started clapping. Then another person joined in. Soon half the room was applauding. Not because they forgave William, but because he'd finally acknowledged their pain. Sometimes that's all people want, to be seen and heard. Over the next few weeks, Jennifer, William, and I worked around the clock. We contacted every person on our list. We calculated fair compensation based on years of service, age, and financial hardship. We set up a special fund for people who had lost their pensions. The process was exhausting but rewarding. Meanwhile, Marcus and Sophia were planning their wedding. Without her father's money, they had to be creative. They chose a small venue at a local park. Sophia's friend, who was a baker, made the wedding cake as a gift. Marcus borrowed his law professor's vacation house for their honeymoon. It was going to be simple and beautiful. Catherine Harrison was not handling things well. She refused to speak to me or William. She blamed everyone but herself for the family's financial problems. She tried to convince Sophia to postpone the wedding until they got their money back, but Sophia refused. Catherine stopped talking to her own daughter because of it. One afternoon, I got an unexpected visit at my apartment. It was Catherine Harrison, looking very different from the polished society woman I'd met at that first dinner. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled. She looked human for the first time. "Linda, may I come in?" she asked quietly. I let her in, offering tea, which she accepted. We sat at my small kitchen table in silence for a moment. Then Catherine said, "I came to apologize. Not because William told me to. Not because Sophia wants me to. But because I need to." I waited for her to continue, sipping my tea. "I've spent my whole life believing that money equals worth," Catherine said. "I treated people terribly because they didn't have what I had. I raised my daughter to think the same way. And now I'm losing her because of it. Sophia barely speaks to me. She's ashamed of me, and she's right to be." Catherine's voice cracked. "I don't know if you can forgive me," Catherine continued. "But I want to try to be better. I want to have a relationship with my daughter again. And I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror without feeling sick." She was crying now, tears rolling down her cheeks. I handed her a tissue from the box on my counter. I thought about everything Catherine had said and done. The mean comments, the judgmental looks, the way she made me feel small and worthless. Part of me wanted to stay angry at her. But I also knew that anger was heavy to carry around. "Catherine, changing is hard," I said. "But it's possible. I see William trying. If you really mean this, then show it through your actions, not just words." Catherine nodded, wiping her eyes. "Can I help? With the compensation fund or whatever you're calling it? I know I don't deserve to be part of it, but I want to do something good for once in my life." I was surprised by her offer. "Let me think about it," I told her. "Right now, focus on rebuilding your relationship with Sophia. That's what matters most." After Catherine left, I called Marcus. "Your future mother-in-law just visited me," I told him. "She apologized. Actually apologized." Marcus sounded shocked. "Really?" "Sophia said her mom has been different lately, but I didn't think she'd actually come talk to you." We chatted for a while, and I could hear the happiness in my son's voice. That made everything worthwhile. The compensation checks started going out in early October. We held small ceremonies at different locations to present them personally. I wanted to look each person in the eye and tell them that what happened to them mattered. That they weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. That they deserved better. At the first ceremony, Helen Rodriguez was there with her mother and sister. When I handed Helen the check that represented her father's stolen pension and lost wages, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing us. For caring. My father would be so grateful." William was at every ceremony, shaking hands and apologizing to people individually. Some people refused to shake his hand. Others forgave him. One man named Thomas actually thanked William for changing. "It takes courage to admit you were wrong," Thomas said. "Not many rich people would do what you're doing now." By mid-October, we distributed $32 million to 743 people and families. Some people got a few $1,000s. Others got hundreds of thousands. We tried to be fair, calculating based on what they'd lost and how much they'd suffered. Every check we sent out felt like a small piece of justice being restored to the world. The media started paying attention to what we were doing. Newspapers wrote articles about the librarian who bought a company to help its victims. Television reporters wanted interviews. I did a few, hoping it would inspire other wealthy people to think about how they use their money and power. Jennifer said I was becoming famous. But fame wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted to help people and teach my son an important lesson. Speaking of Marcus, his wedding was coming up fast. He and Sophia had set the date for November 15th. It would be a small ceremony with about 40 guests in the park, followed by dinner at a nice but not fancy restaurant. Sophia asked me to help her pick out a wedding dress. We went to a regular bridal shop, not one of those expensive boutiques where dresses cost more than cars. She tried on several dresses and finally found one she loved for $800. "It's perfect," she said, looking at herself in the mirror. "And I can actually afford it with my own money from work." I was so proud of the woman Sophia was becoming. She'd gotten a job at a non-profit organization that helps homeless families find housing. She wasn't making much money, but she loved the work. "I'm actually making a difference," she told me. "Not just writing checks at charity galas, but really helping people. It feels amazing." The week before the wedding, something unexpected happened. A lawyer contacted Jennifer Wu with a message. Robert Harrison's business partners, the people he'd been working with for years, wanted to sue me. They claimed I'd stolen the company illegally and they wanted it back. I felt my stomach drop when Jennifer told me. "Can they win?" I asked nervously. Jennifer shook her head. "No, everything we did was completely legal. But they can make things difficult and expensive. Lawsuits take time and money, even when you're in the right. They're probably hoping you'll settle just to make them go away." Thought about it. I'm not settling. What we did was right, and I'm not backing down. The lawsuit was filed on Monday. By Tuesday, the media was reporting on it. Former business associates sue librarian over Harrison Industries acquisition. Some reporters made it sound like I was the bad guy, stealing a company from honest businessmen. But others defended me, pointing out that these were the same men who'd helped William Harrison destroy so many businesses. Jennifer filed our response to the lawsuit, and we prepared for a legal battle. But something surprising happened. 3 of the 5 men who were suing me suddenly dropped out of the lawsuit. Then a 4th man dropped out. That left just 1 man, Richard Sterling, still trying to sue me. I found out why the others dropped out when one of them, a man named George Chen, called me directly. "Mrs. Carter, I wanted to explain why I withdrew from the lawsuit. After I saw what you were doing with the compensation fund, I realized I couldn't fight against that. What you're doing is right. What we did with William Harrison was wrong. I'm sorry." George's call made me feel better about humanity. Even people who'd done wrong things could change their minds when shown the right path. That left just Richard Sterling, who seemed determined to cause trouble. Jennifer assured me that one person suing wouldn't be enough to win. "Let him waste his money on lawyers," she said. "We'll win this easily." The wedding day arrived with beautiful autumn weather. The park was decorated with simple orange and yellow flowers. Chairs were set up in rows facing a small wooden arch. It wasn't fancy, but it was beautiful. Marcus looked so handsome in his suit, and Sophia's dress was perfect. I cried the moment I saw them together. William and Catherine Harrison sat together in the front row. They looked different than they had at that first dinner party. Smaller somehow, but also more real. More human. Catherine caught my eye and gave me a small smile. Smiled back. Forgiveness is a process, not a moment, but we were making progress. The ceremony was simple and sweet. Marcus and Sophia wrote their own vows. Marcus promised to always value kindness over wealth, love over status, and character over reputation. Sophia promised to never forget where she came from, to help others whenever possible, and to raise their future children to judge people by their hearts, not their bank accounts. When they kissed, everyone clapped and cheered. I looked around at the small group of guests and realized this was worth more than any fancy wedding in a mansion. These were people who truly loved Marcus and Sophia. People who would support them through good times and bad. That's what family is supposed to be. At the reception dinner, William Harrison stood up to make a toast. Everyone got quiet, unsure what he would say. "A few months ago," William began, "I would have given a speech about success and achievement and building wealth. Today I want to talk about something more important. I want to talk about redemption. My daughter is marrying a wonderful man today. A man I nearly ruined by teaching him the wrong values. Thankfully, his mother was brave enough to show us all what really matters in life. Linda Carter could have spent her inheritance on herself. Instead, she spent it helping people I hurt. That's the definition of a hero." William raised his glass toward me. "Linda, thank you for saving my daughter from becoming like I was. Thank you for teaching my family what true wealth means. And thank you for giving me a chance to become a better person. To Linda, and to second chances." Everyone raised their glasses and repeated, "To Linda and second chances." I felt tears running down my face, but they were happy tears. This was why I'd spent Aunt Rose's money the way I did. Not for revenge, though that had been part of it at first. But for this moment. For seeing people change and grow and become better versions of themselves. After dinner, Marcus pulled me aside. "Mom, I have something for you." He handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a beautiful silver necklace with a small book charm on it. "For the best librarian and the best mom in the world," Marcus said. "Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I forgot who I was supposed to be." I hugged my son and cried some more. "I'm so proud of you, Marcus. Not because you're a lawyer or because you married into a wealthy family, but because you chose to be a good person when it mattered most. That's all your father and I ever wanted for you." The next few weeks passed in a happy blur. The lawsuit from Richard Sterling was dismissed when the judge ruled that our acquisition of Harrison Industries was completely legal. Richard tried to appeal, but his own lawyers told him he had no case. Finally, he gave up. The legal threat was over. Jennifer Wu helped me set up the Harrison Recovery Fund as a permanent organization. We hired staff to continue the work of finding and compensating people who'd been hurt by predatory business practices, not just William Harrison's victims, but anyone who'd been treated unfairly by greedy corporations. Became my new full-time job. William Harrison officially came to work for the Recovery Fund. He took a small salary, much less than he used to make, and spent his days contacting families and businesses, apologizing and making amends. He told me once that it was the first time in his life he'd felt like he was doing something meaningful. Catherine Harrison also started volunteering with us. She worked in our office, answering phones and scheduling appointments. She wasn't very good at it at first, having never had a real job before, but she learned. And slowly, her relationship with Sophia began to heal. They had lunch together once a week now. By December, the Harrison Recovery Fund had helped over 1,000 people. We'd returned $34 million to families who'd been cheated by various companies. We'd helped several small businesses restart after being destroyed by larger corporations. We'd made a real difference in people's lives. I was down to my last $3 million of Aunt Rose's inheritance. Some people might think I was foolish for giving away so much money. But I'd never been happier or felt more purposeful in my life. I had enough to live comfortably for the rest of my days, and I'd helped change hundreds of lives. That was worth more than any amount of money. On Christmas Eve, Marcus and Sophia invited me to dinner at their small apartment. It was just the three of us, plus William and Catherine Harrison, two families who'd started out as enemies, now sitting together sharing a simple meal. Catherine had cooked the turkey herself, her first time ever cooking a holiday dinner. "I wanted to thank you all," Sophia said during dinner. 6 months ago, I was a spoiled, shallow person who only cared about money and status. Today, I'm married to the man I love, I have a job I'm passionate about, and I have a relationship with my parents that's based on honesty instead of appearances. "Linda, you gave me all of that." "You gave it to yourself," I replied. "I just showed you what was possible. You're the one who chose to change." Sophia smiled at me with tears in her eyes. Then she looked at Marcus and took his hand. "We have some news," she said. "We're going to have a baby. You're going to be a grandmother, Linda." I jumped up from my chair and hugged them both, crying and laughing at the same time. A grandchild. I was going to be a grandmother. Marcus looked so happy and Sophia was glowing. Even William and Catherine looked thrilled, though Catherine was crying too. "This baby is going to grow up learning the right values," Marcus said. "We're going to teach them that people matter more than money, that kindness is more important than status, that standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, is what makes a person truly successful." As we celebrated together that Christmas Eve, I thought about how far we'd all come. 6 months ago, I was an unemployed librarian being mocked by wealthy people who thought I was worthless. Now I was running a fund that helped people, I had my son back, and I was going to be a grandmother. Aunt Rose's $52 million had changed my life, but not in the way most people would think. The money itself wasn't what mattered. It was what the money allowed me to do. It gave me the power to stand up to bullies. It gave me the ability to help people who needed it. It gave me a chance to teach important lessons to the people I loved. In January, something wonderful happened. The city announced they were reopening my old library. Budget cuts had been reversed, and they wanted to hire back the librarians they'd let go. They offered me my old job back. I thought about it carefully. I loved being a librarian. I loved helping people find books and teaching kids to read. But I also loved my work with the recovery fund. Finally, I came up with a solution. I would work part-time at both places. 3 days a week at the library, 2 days a week at the recovery fund office. That way I could do both things I was passionate about. My first day back at the library was emotional. The building looked exactly the same. The smell of books greeted me like an old friend. Several regular patrons came up to hug me, saying they'd missed me. One little girl named Emma told me she'd been waiting for me to come back so I could help her find more fairy tale books. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Library work, recovery fund work, dinners with Marcus and Sophia, weekly meetings with Jennifer Wu to discuss new cases. I moved out of my small apartment into a slightly bigger one with an extra bedroom for when the baby came to visit. Nothing fancy, just comfortable. In March, Richard Sterling, the man who tried to sue me, showed up at the recovery fund office. I was nervous when my assistant told me he was there. Was he going to cause more trouble? But when he came in, he looked humble and sad. "Mrs. Carter, I owe you an apology," he said. Richard explained that after his lawsuit failed, he'd hit rock bottom. His wife left him, his friends abandoned him, and he realized he'd wasted his life chasing money and power. "Watching what you did with your inheritance made me see how empty my life has been," he said. "I want to do better. Can you teach me how?" I was skeptical at first. Richard had tried to destroy everything I'd built. But I also believed in second chances. "If you're serious about changing," I told him, "then prove it. Volunteer here for 3 months. No pay. Just work. Show me through your actions that you mean what you're saying." Richard agreed. He started coming in every day, doing whatever tasks we needed done. He filed paperwork, made phone calls, and listened to people's stories about how they'd been hurt by greedy businesses. Slowly I saw him change. The arrogant businessman disappeared, and a more thoughtful, caring person emerged. In June, Sophia gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. They named her Rose after my Aunt Rose, the woman whose inheritance had changed all our lives. When I held little Rose for the first time, I cried happy tears. She was perfect, with tiny fingers and her father's nose. "We want you to be very involved in her life," Sophia told me. "We want her to know her grandmother who's brave and kind and stands up for what's right. We want her to learn from you." I promised I would teach Rose everything I knew about treating people with kindness and respect. The Harrison Recovery Fund continued to grow. We expanded to help people in other cities who'd been victims of corporate greed. We hired more staff, including Richard Sterling, who'd proven himself over 3 months of volunteer work. Even William Harrison seemed like a completely different person now, humble and dedicated to making amends. Catherine Harrison volunteered to teach classes for other wealthy women about using their privilege to help others. She called it From Country Clubs to Compassion. Her classes were surprisingly popular. Apparently, there were other rich women who wanted to do something meaningful with their lives but didn't know how to start. One afternoon I got a letter from the mayor's office. They wanted to give me an award for community service. The ceremony would be at City Hall with TV cameras and important people making speeches. I almost said no, but Jennifer convinced me to accept. "It'll bring attention to the recovery fund," she said. "More attention means more donations, which means helping more people." The award ceremony was overwhelming. Hundreds of people showed up, including many of the families we'd helped through the recovery fund. When I walked on stage to accept the award, everyone stood up and clapped. The mayor called me a shining example of how one person with courage and compassion can change the world. In my acceptance speech I kept it simple. "I'm not a hero," I said. "I'm just someone who got lucky and decided to share that luck with others. Every person in this room has the power to make someone's life better. You don't need millions of dollars. You just need a kind heart and the courage to stand up for what's right." After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She said her name was Maya and she just inherited money from her grandmother. I saw what you did and I want to do something similar. Can you help me? I smiled and gave her Jennifer Wu's business card. Call her tomorrow. Let's start planning how you can make a difference. That summer, Marcus made partner at his law firm. Instead of celebrating at an expensive restaurant, he and Sophia had a barbecue in the park for their friends and family. Little Rose was 3 months old, sleeping peacefully in her stroller while we all ate hamburgers and played games. It was perfect. William Harrison told me that day that he'd been contacted by several business schools. They wanted him to speak to their students about ethics and the consequences of greed. They want me to be an example of what not to do, he said with a small laugh. But also an example of how you can change and try to make things right. I encouraged him to do it. Young business students need to hear from someone who learned these lessons the hard way. Maybe you can prevent the next generation from making the same mistakes. William agreed and started traveling to universities to give speeches. He never accepted payment, donating any honorariums to the recovery fund. As autumn arrived again, almost exactly a year after I'd inherited Aunt Rose's money, I reflected on everything that had changed. I'd gone from unemployed librarian to running a charitable fund. I'd turned enemies into friends. I'd helped hundreds of families recover from financial devastation. I'd earned my son's respect and gained a daughter-in-law I loved. Most importantly, I'd learned that wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the lives you touch, the kindness you show, and the courage you have to stand up for what's right. Aunt Rose's $52 million was gone, spent on making the world a little bit better. But I was richer than I'd ever been. One October evening, I was reading to little Rose at Marcus and Sophia's apartment. She was almost 6 months old now, and she loved story time. As I read her a fairy tale about a princess who saved her kingdom through kindness, I thought about how life imitates stories sometimes. I'd been the underestimated librarian who everyone thought was powerless. But I'd found my own kind of magic in Aunt Rose's inheritance, and I'd used it to create my own happy ending. Not just for me but for hundreds of other people too. That's the best kind of story, the kind where everyone wins except the villains. And even some of the villains had changed. William Harrison was proof that people could learn and grow and become better. Catherine Harrison was proof that it's never too late to develop compassion. Richard Sterling was proof that even enemies could become allies. These were the stories I would tell Rose when she was old enough to understand. The Harrison Recovery Fund is still operating today. We've helped over 2,000 families recover from corporate exploitation. We've returned more than $50 million to people who'd been cheated. We've changed laws to make it harder for companies to treat workers unfairly. The work continues, and it always will because there will always be people who need help standing up to bullies. Jennifer Wu is still my lawyer and my friend. She's helped several other people use their wealth to create positive change. She says I started a movement, but I think people were always looking for permission to do good things with their money. They just needed to see that it was possible. Marcus is an amazing father and continues to be a lawyer who fights for regular people, not big corporations. Sophia runs her own nonprofit now, helping families find affordable housing. Together, they're raising Rose to understand that privilege comes with responsibility, and that the measure of a person is how they treat those who can't do anything for them. As for me, I'm back to being a librarian part-time, which makes me happy. I still help kids find the perfect books. I still teach reading classes. And I still believe that libraries are magical places where anyone, regardless of their bank account, can access the world's knowledge and dreams. The other part of my time is spent at the Recovery Fund, continuing the work that Aunt Rose's inheritance made possible. Every check we send out, every family we help, every wrong we help make right, it's all part of Aunt Rose's legacy. I never met her as an adult, but I hope she'd be proud of what I did with her gift. Sometimes I think about that dinner party where this all began. Where Sophia mocked my job and everyone laughed at my unemployment. Where William bragged about destroying businesses and Catherine looked at me like I was dirt. Seems like a lifetime ago, but it was only a year and a half. If I could go back to that moment, knowing everything that would happen next, would I change anything? Would I avoid the pain and humiliation?
Well,
Because that night taught me something important. It taught me that sometimes the worst moments in our lives are actually the beginning of our greatest adventures. Being mocked at that dinner party gave me the push I needed to take action. It opened my eyes to how cruel people with power can be. And it motivated me to use my unexpected wealth to create real change. Without that painful night, none of the good things that followed would have happened. These days, when people ask me for advice, I tell them this: don't underestimate quiet people. Don't assume that someone without money is someone without power. Don't judge people by their jobs or their bank accounts. And most importantly, remember that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, so be kind. As I finish telling you this story, little Rose is almost a year old now. She's starting to walk and say her first words. Yesterday, Sophia sent me a video of Rose pointing at a book and saying, "Gamma," which is her word for grandma. My heart melted. This little girl will grow up in a world where her family values kindness over wealth. Aunt Rose's $52 million bought something money can't usually buy: justice, redemption, and change. It proved that one person with courage and resources can make a real difference. It showed that wealthy people can choose compassion over greed. And it demonstrated that the best revenge isn't hurting those who hurt you, but becoming so successful at being good that they want to join you. Thank you for listening to my story here on Granny's Voice. I hope it reminds you that you're never too old to stand up for yourself, never too poor to be valuable, and never too powerless to create change. The Harrisons learned that lesson the hard way, but at least they learned it. And that makes all the difference. Don't forget to like this video and share your own story in the comments below. Your voice matters just like mine did.